LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Lydia. My name is Lydia Khalil. Today we've got a gentleman who, I think like most of us, started uni on a different journey, but has ended up in the mental health field. I'm not going to share too much. I'm just going to introduce him. He's known as Dr. Akinrinade, but he'll tell us a little bit about his journey. Good evening, Dr. Akin.
Hi, Lydia. Yeah, thank you for having me here today. My name is Dr. Akinrinade. As Lydia said, my initial field was in political science, and I just felt I wasn't fulfilled in that field. So I went ahead to study psychology, and then mental health, then cognitive behavioral therapy, and also specialize in addiction. So I went as far as to my PhD degree, which I received about 3 years ago. And currently, I work for the National Health Service in the UK as a clinical practice manager. My interest is just on mental health. I love it so much. I love mental health.
Okay, so how does somebody in political science or started this journey in political science to this big leap across? But I guess political science, a bit of it is actually studying, how humans vote and react on the different types of government. So I guess there is some, there's some basis of psychology in it.
Absolutely.
What made you do the big switch?
Yeah, it is a big switch.
Because take you down a different line career-wise, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think I always wanted to help people, and I was thinking of becoming, really, when I was a child, I was dreaming of becoming a president of Nigeria. I think it's not too late anyway. So that made me to study politics, and I actually did study to master's level. My master's was in international relations before I crossed over. And I just saw a lot of young people, our youth, going the wrong pathway. And I felt, what is happening? I wanted to study how human mind works. And that actually what took me to a different pathway. And to be candid, Lydia, it's been a great journey so far. I've been around the world. I've worked in Australia to help people. I've worked in Canada. I work with the First Nations people in Canada. And Australia, the Aborigines, because I'm sure you know the history a bit. So they've been quite deprived, and there's so much addiction going on there.
I think I've seen it on some documentaries.
Yeah.
It's the fact they're so marginalized that has sort of driven them.
Yeah, absolutely, because of their, So it's been a great journey so far, and really, I just love what I'm doing, and yes, I couldn't have chosen another profession. Yes.
So it worked out.
It worked out well by the grace of God.
No, I didn't. No, have you lost the presidential dream?
I have not lost it because really, I think each time I wake up, I just get that passion that, look, there's something for you out there in terms of governing the country, in terms of using my skills as well. Because I think if our leaders are compassionate, our country will have been a better place. So
your home country is Nigeria, but you
Nigeria, yeah, my original country. So I think, yeah, with my political science background, mental health, I think it's actually both a wonderful combination. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know what I mean by that.
Okay, great. I think even when I was sort of doing a read, I was like, okay, I can ask this question, I can ask that question, but there's like, as you've said, your career really has spanned across continents. So I don't know if Canada would consider themselves North America, but yes, they are part of North America, all the way down to Australia. And you're somewhere in the middle now.
I'm back in the UK.
So I mean, I think I'm saying that so that people can understand the range of your abilities and how well versed your career is and has been, and I'm sure continues to thrive. But one of the many qualifications, I think that I will save that for the end. Like, what made you go on this big academic journey? But let's talk a little bit about mental health. And one of the things that sort of stood out when I was reading is this actually mental health first aid. Yeah. So please tell me and tell everybody who is listening, what is mental health first aid? I was thinking, okay, we do first aid for when people collapse. We learn how to resuscitate or treat burns or whatever. So what is mental health first aid?
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about first aid for physical health, then it's actually the equivalent to mental health. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes at work, people are suffering with depression, even psychosis, but no one cares because it's not really obvious.
Okay, is it that we don't care, or is it that it's because we don't know how to pick up the signs?
I think people see, up to now, even in Europe, they see if you're depressed, they see it as a form of weakness or sign of weakness. So that's what I meant by we don't really care, because they'll tell you to just get up and get with your job rather than someone coming to you and having a chat with you that, oh, how are you doing? How can I be of help? And signposting you to where you could get help. So I think the reason why the mental health first aid came into being is due to this nonchalant behavior from colleagues. And if someone has got, say, for example, serious physical health problems, people will understand that, John is not well, it's a whole a poor John. It's off.
Even if he's got the flu, something
absolutely. It's acceptable in our society. But if someone is depressed, then they will start stigmatizing, start saying that, oh, he's just been lazy.
Yes, I've heard that before, that he just wants to be lazy.
Absolutely. So I think that is one of the reasons why it's actually a national legislation in the UK that brought about the mental health first aid, that the employers will actually train their staff on the issues of mental health. And they should also train them how to give basic mental health interventions. As in, if your colleague is not feeling well, you should know the right word to say to them. Kind of word that will actually make them to feel good, not the kind of word that will actually bring them down. Because obviously, someone who is suffering from depression, it only takes a bit for you to push them off the edge. Just a bit. So if you know,
pull them back.
Yes. Absolutely. So it's just a very, very basic training for employees to know the signs of depression, know the signs of bipolar, know the signs of symptoms of schizophrenia, so that when any of their colleagues is actually experiencing such, they know what to do and they know how to signpost them for support. Because the support are out there. Mm-hmm. Support are out there for people. But obviously, when people are depressed at work, they keep it because they think it's a thing of shame.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you don't want your manager to know that you're depressed, because if you get anything wrong at work, they will think it's because you're depressed. That is why that happens to you. Whereas someone who is not depressed, if they made a mistake, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you have that underlying problem around depression, people will actually say it's because John is depressed. That's why he keeps on making mistakes. So they've kind of stigmatized mental health or mental illness, which shouldn't be the case. So first stage is about having someone in the organization, like I would say, like a mini counselor or therapist, not well trained, but with basic brief therapy skills that you can support such employee when they're having a breakdown or when they're not feeling well. Part of their role is also to support them when they are home, when they're going through the recovery. They call them at home to check on them, to see how they're doing, and things like that. And also to support them to the NHS or to the doctor or to the GP or to the psychiatrist for support. So, and it's about bringing awareness to the organization as well, that everyone have mental health problems. One out of every 4 people in the UK will suffer from mental illness in their lifetime. 1 out of every 4 people. So it's such a huge number.
Yes, it's close to sort of the cancer number.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, at one point in most people's life, there will be a time where they would need help. Yeah. So not today I'm feeling not 100%, but tomorrow I'll be okay. But people who are for a sustained period are not feeling up to themselves. And some of this actually can go on for a year or more. Sometimes it now becomes part of their life, part of their history, the same way as people who have diabetes or high blood pressure. And it needs to be managed for the rest of their life. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a shame, such is the case in mental health, that most people, I have some clients, some patients in my hospital, they'll ask me, oh, when am I going to stop taking the medication? But it's very difficult for me to tell them that probably it's going to be for the rest of your life, really, especially when it's an organic induced mental health. Which is something
what is that? You have to tell us what that is. What is that?
Yeah, organic mental health is, say, for example, depression. This is not due to drug use. It's just genetic, it's organic, because part of the brain is
something in the physical body isn't working properly.
In the brain, yeah.
In the brain, yes.
The brain is not working. And it's a chemical which is called serotonin. Yeah. Serotonin. So if it's not really adequate in the brain, that's where they prescribe antidepressants to actually make up the shortage in the chemical in the brain. So, and medication like sertraline, fluoxetine, citalopram, these are antidepressants or Prozac that the doctors prescribe for people with depression to use. So, and going back to mental health as well, everyone has got mental health. It's so simple that it's a state of mind and it's a state of well-being. So, and we have to continue from one side to the other side. So, and we can actually vary. Sometimes we have perfect mental health. Sometimes we move from being 100% to 60. Sometimes below. So it is when it's kind of below 50 that is driving down to 40. Then it starts affecting our day-to-day activities.
Okay, so the person isn't functioning. I'm not sure we all function at the optimum every day.
We are not
we're sort of just, getting along, but when it's actually impacting their daily activities. So give us an example.
So, for example, now, if you are going to work in the morning and perhaps you have anxiety problems or underlying anxiety problems, but you're coping because you're using your medication or you're using counseling, coping skills, and you're getting on well. But suddenly, when you get on the bus, you start having this panic attack. Then suddenly, you're not able to be in the public place. Then it's actually intruding into your normality. So at that period, things have gone so bad that it's now a case of mental illness because you can't cope any longer. And some with depression as well, the same thing. If you get to the state that you're not in charge of your mood, your emotions, maybe you're being tearful every time I walk without any problems, then that has come on the way of your well-being. So that's the time you need to seek for help. So it means that your mental health has suffered so badly to the extent that you will need support. So it has actually become mental illness. So people often think that when we're talking about mental illness is when you have psychosis, when you're hearing voices, but it's not about that. It's about those little things. If you're struggling with anything that you normally do without any stress, you do freely, and suddenly you find it difficult to wake up in the morning, to brush your teeth, to even have your bath or have a shower, then yes, absolutely. So it shows that something is happening in your life. Then at that time you need to seek for help. So that's the example. We all feel down at times that we just don't feel like doing it today. That's normal. Yeah, we say up there. And you say something very, you made a good point there that when it's becoming a pattern, when things that you normally do every time, then suddenly it's taking a week for you to recover, it's taking 2 weeks, then it's actually becoming a problem, a mental illness problem. So that's the time you need to seek for help.
Okay. So mental health first aid is applicable at work. So
yes,
it's telling the employer, he's telling the employees, if you notice somebody in your team isn't themselves, they're a little bit, let's say, withdrawn, much quieter, much slower at what they're doing, not really interacting, then the option would be to approach them and offer help and say, is there something I can do? Is something really good for you? And to make the HR people aware that this does happen. Please signpost people to professionals, signpost them to the GP, signpost them to the NHS. What's the value of that? What's the value of mental health first aid?
The value of it is that it makes people to have that awareness to also understand that, look, there is an equal opportunity for everyone. If you're having physical health problems and mental health, there's no difference. So because, as I said earlier on, if you're experiencing mental health problems at place of work, I know some people that have been sacked because they're depressed, because the HR would actually see mental illness as a problem. That, you've just been lazy, and people get fired from work. Whereas if you have serious physical health problems, people will actually support you. You'll be supported. People will actually ask about your well-being. But when it comes to mental illness, that's not the case. But since we started doing the mental health first aid, the awareness at work has improved greatly. The HR, I think they're more in tune with what is mental illness, and they kind of actually have a mental health day now at work. That you take a day off, that if you use it to go and relax, you don't have to be sick, but it's a bonus where people can go home and use one day in the year just to relax and just to calm themselves down. So it's more like a bonus annual leave.
I think what is also important to bring out is that what you've said about people noticing what's happening with their colleagues as well can transcend into our relationship. So, and when we were describing, intrusive thoughts, when we were describing somebody not being able to get out of bed, draw the curtains. So these are signs that, yes, there's the awareness at workplace, but also the awareness that we can build with members of our family, with friends, with extended family. So it is something that actually we all should be aware of, and how we manage it. So, for example, if somebody in a household says to another person, "I've got a headache," they would say, take some paracetamol or drink some water or lie down and have a bit of a rest. But if somebody said to another person, "You know what, I don't feel like going to work today. I don't feel like coming out of the bed and brushing my teeth or having a wash." Now, how that other person responds is quite important. So what we're talking about, though, is starting from a workplace, but actually is letting the people who are listening and watching know that it's something that they also can do for anybody who's close to them.
Absolutely, you're very correct, Lydia, because I was talking to my colleagues about the need to have a conversation at home, in the family, about mental illness. And if people have started having that conversation from home, in public places, the people who are working in the organization, they're also human beings. So if that conversation is actually being held across families, in the public places, then everyone will have a good understanding of what mental illness is all about. So it's about people actually having that conversation at home, parents having that very open. I know it's a very difficult conversation, but people must have.
What makes it difficult, though? What makes it difficult?
Because it is difficult
to admit that my legs ache, or my arm is sore, or I've got, people can easily say I've got a runny tummy, or I've got heartburn. What makes this thing about saying, I'm not feeling myself in my mind? What makes it difficult?
It is difficult because sometimes most people who express it is very difficult for them to express their feelings. And when they express their feelings, it can be quite weird to some people who have no idea of what it is to have mental illness. If someone tells you that they're hearing voices telling them to do something bad to themselves, I'm sure the other person will be a bit, "Oh, that is very scary." That conversation is quite comfortable with them. And people will get scared, and then stigma is attached to it. So I think it's about people having that conversation all over again. So the more we have the conversation, the more people get comfortable with the conversation. And to be candid, before I went for my training. Before I used to be one of those people as well that when I see someone talking about a mental illness, I used to get scared. That, I don't feel
very there's fear. That's what you're saying. So people are
fear.
To hear it even. So it's difficult for the person who's experiencing it to express it, because they're already afraid. I mean, you use the example of hearing voices, but that's an extreme.
It is.
But sort of somebody actually saying, "You know what, I feel depressed today." Now that's scary for the person to voice, but it's also scary for a wife to hear that, or a husband to hear that, or a parent to hear that, or a brother or a sister or mom, dad to hear that from their child. Is it because we get the part of the stigma, because I think everybody, as you said, believes in this. If I have mental health, then I'm crazy. So there's that part. But is it because it's so unknown, or is it what do you think brings
Yeah, I think it's just the social construct of the whole approach to mental health, the way the society perceive mental health. So I would say more or less a social construct that people have actually attributed mental illness to dangerousness. That when someone, regardless of the pathopsychology of mental illness, people think that, look, even if it's mild mental illness such as depression, people think that, oh, someone with depression, they're quite irrational in their thinking. In terms of their emotion, they cannot actually process themselves very well. So they're not stable people. So people tend to kind of say, you know what, I don't think I really want to get closer to that person. I mean, I'll tell you one good example that I know of someone he was about to get married to this lady, and the lady now kind of disclosed to him that it's had a few episodes of admission into the hospital for depression. It kind of freaked this guy out that marriage, he actually left this lady, and that's a very good example of how our society have actually perceived mental illness, and especially people, non-European people, say people from Africa, or say my own country where I come from. There's so much attached to mental illness that if you want to get married and the family, because there is something they normally do, they will do a bit of research. If you want to marry someone, they'll go to your family to find out if there's no mental health issues in the family. If they find out that even one person has got mental illness, if not, it doesn't have to be your wife, the person you want to marry. I think they will have to put
a member of the family has suffered.
Yeah, because they believe that it's in the lineage. Mental illness is actually in the family lineage. So the family of they might actually have a second thought about that marriage. And so the cultural aspect of it also comes into it, that it makes people to be very
people of color, Black, Asian.
Yeah.
Do you feel that we struggle more with accepting that somebody is struggling with their mental health? Do you think that we? I mean, from the backdrop of what you said, but I guess I'm asking across your work, because you would have worked, I think, with.
You're very correct, Lydia. I have a friend she's from Algeria. She's from we were having a chat last week, and I think they share similar perception when it comes to mental illness. That if they know that a member of the family has a mental health problems, people get scared of the family, and because it's a thing of shame, sometimes that individual with mental illness, they kind of hide that person. Sometimes they put shame just to keep them somewhere because they have become an embarrassment to the family. So it is. So we still have a long way to go when it comes to non-Europeans. Even here in Europe, they've done very well, but they're still. You could hear on the radio they're still talking about mental health awareness. In fact, today this program is good. Today is the last day of Mental Health Awareness Week.
Yeah.
Do you know? Okay, so it's a good topic for today. So, and I mean, the UK, the Europe, they're still talking about awareness of mental health. People have to actually understand, and they have to understand other people's feelings, how they feel about mental illness, and how to be supportive of other people. So I think we still have a long way to go. The conversation must continue. And yes.
And I guess I'm going to go back to this thing about medication. Now, I think, let me say, ethnic minorities, I just don't want to call out on our people, but like ethnic minorities struggle with acceptance of mental health.
Yeah.
They struggle with the concept of therapy, talking therapy. And I think because we usually the community will offer that support. Yeah. So usually the community will be there to come alongside this person if they're having some momentary struggle.
Yeah.
But then we're living in a different society. Even in Africa, I'm sure in Australia or Latin America, where even in the countries where community was the watchword before, things like it took a village to raise a child. I don't think those things are as they used to be now. So now we need to step out and use other forms to manage mental illness or when somebody's well. Now, medication, how would you say? I'm not saying every Black person is anti-medication. Please, I don't want people sending me messages that I said this, but in your experience, so let's qualify it. In your experience, do we resist more medication? I know from my experience that we resist even talking therapy. People would say to me, do people actually come to you and sit for 15 minutes? I'm like, yes, they do.
Yeah.
So how is it for medication? Because some people might opt for medication and not opt for talking therapy. Is medication easier? Is it more acceptable by us?
I think people are now coming to believe that medication is quite important as a form of treatment. However, especially if it's actually severe depression. So let's use depression as a good example, because there are categories of depression. You may have mild depression, you may have very, very severe depression. So but if you're actually suffering from severe depression, I think there's highly possibility that you'll be prescribed some antidepressants because it deals with the chemical imbalance in the brain. So you need some medication.
Though, is that easier to accept than sit in front of a therapist and talk for 50 minutes?
I think people will actually prefer to take the medication
than talk.
Than talking. And I can tell you the reason why. People believe medication, just like if you take medication for a headache, you could get the instant relief or outcome, the headache will subside, you feel better. So people actually feel the same with the medication. That look, if I take the medication, obviously it will help with the chemical in the brain, I'll feel good. However, what research has found out recently is that medication without therapy is not really the best. So it's better to actually join both together. So they call it complementary treatment. So you're taking medication. Also, you have to get some sessions of therapy, inclusive. But most people do not want therapy. And I know why. It is very difficult for you to start pouring your life story to a therapist you do not know. And what is the bedrock of good therapies? It is relationship. Before someone can trust you, you need to get to know them. In fact, a client may not tell you about themselves until the maybe third or fourth session, because they are warming up to you, they're getting to know you, then they can start opening up. So I think that is the main debacle when it comes to therapy, that how can I just go to Dr. Maps? I don't know him from nowhere. I can't start telling him about my story. So, and I went through that when I was in Canada. I was working with the First Nations people. There were a lot of issues around rape, and very ugly situations. As young as 15, 13 years old, girls, being raped. So, and I could see that it took me almost about 3 to 4 weeks before I could start getting some good narrative from them, because they were scared, they were scared to actually reveal their story to me. So it took that trust. I had to first form that relationship with them, very healthy relationship. Then they started opening up to me about their problems. So, and that's also an implication for therapists that they need to actually be patient as well. And they need to form that relationship with their patient if they want to actually hear their narrative, their story. Because it is very difficult to tell people you don't know about what you're suffering from. It is difficult. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why people will actually prefer tablet. They see it as a quick fix. Let me just take it. I feel good. I don't need to see a therapist. Whereas therapy is actually is as good as medication. Research has confirmed, especially when it comes to mild depression.
Yeah. If not even better, because I think sometimes the medication numbs the feelings.
Yes.
But a good enough therapist will provide a safe enough space that those feelings are explored, and a lot of times dealt and expunged there, and the person leaves much healthier without the medication. Yeah, I'm thinking the therapist on today.
There's no side effects in therapy.
Yeah,
there are no side effects. Whereas,
maybe.
I mean, therapy could be maybe the therapist is something that you think is not the best. Yeah, I mean, it's considered a side effect. But when it comes to medication, oftentimes my patient complain of that they feel detached from their body.
Yeah, because it numbs
their feelings. Yeah. So, and I understand, but people will just want to take medication because they could just be
that's the
easiest option. Yeah, no one sees that. Just put it in their mouth, drink water, is gone. So, whereas therapy is hard work. You need to put in time.
It is. And
it's hard work.
It means really unveiling yourself and being vulnerable.
Absolutely.
To somebody. But I guess the good side is that you're vulnerable to somebody who is not in your world.
Absolutely.
Isn't going to come into your world anyway. So it's a safe space.
Yeah, it is. So yeah.
Let's move on to I think something that you specialize in, which is addiction.
Addiction.
Yeah, we've had a program where a gentleman was a drug addict and overcame it. But just sort of basically tell us what is the definition of somebody who is addicted?
I think addiction is more of being overwhelmed with a substance that, to the extent that if you've not used such a substance, you don't feel that you're normal. So you create a bit of normality in the form of abnormality. So that's what addiction does to you. And I always tell people, when it comes to addiction, there are 4 stages. Often people start with experimentation. They experiment, let me just see how it feels like. And perhaps some people will stop there. And then some people may take it to the second stage, which is the regular use of it. They start using it. And when they start using it, that actually it changes their life. And they're not the person you used to know. They become so irritable. They become so angry at times because there's an aspect in the brain, the dopamine, is running so high now. It's a chemical imbalance that actually connects our feelings to the neurotransmitter. So when you use drugs, it kind of deregulates the chemical in the brain. And there's an aspect of the brain that actually likes the dopamine. It actually likes the brain to be rewarded through anything that excites the brain. So that's why they say the more people...
Like a stimulant.
Stimulant, yeah. So it stimulates that aspect of the brain. And the more you use it, the more you become addicted. So when people keep using substance, so they create a world of normality for themselves, which is actually...
In the abnormality, I like
the abnormality, as I said earlier on. So that is just the basic definition for me in psychology of an addiction, that you create a very crazy world for yourself. And within that world, you feel so comfortable. And going back to people who are going through negative life events, they actually think that when they use drugs, it numbs their pain. At that period, they feel that, oh God, this is the best moment of my life. But to them, that is normality. But when the drugs wears off, then to them, that becomes their abnormality.
So the reality is the abnormal is abnormal.
Yes.
And when they're in this, will I use it, suspended or euphoric state?
Euphoric state.
That is their normality.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want us to talk about people who are functioning addicts.
Yeah.
Because I think people who are functioning addicts don't think they're addicts.
Addicts.
Yeah. Because just like we were talking about people who are unwell, we imagine that anybody who's suffering mental illness is psychotic and is hearing voices and is suffering from schizophrenia. So we don't imagine that there are other stages. We just see that unwell means, madman or woman. Now, but there are people who are addicts, but are not what we visualize or what we see on TV. I was going to say the crack addict or the heroin addict who is stealing and has been put out of their homes and begging and prostituting for money for drugs. But there is that person who is addicted and feels, or their family feels, they're not addicted because they might still be going to work or they still are holding it together.
Yeah, that's very correct. But what I want to say, Lydia, is that there are a lot of people like that, but it's only a matter of time before they will decompensate and they'll actually become just like anyone on the streets. I mean, who is very addicted and they're homeless and they're seeking for help. And you're very correct. You see a lot of people, they go to work, but that is where this force, going back to the mental force state. Yeah. So because I've seen a lot of situations whereby we actually identify some staff actually going through a form of addiction, alcohol addiction. Because when they come to work, the smell of alcohol, and if they have not used alcohol in the morning, they don't feel good. You could imagine someone at work 8 a.m. in the morning, they're actually losing alcohol. Their breath is so thick that you could similarly smell alcohol. So, but these people, it does impact their productivity at work. They are surviving, they are coping, but they are not actually in their best form. So people like that, we still send them to like rehab. Okay, go for 2 weeks, go and get yourself together and come back to work. But sometimes we can manage them for that long. Some of them will get to a level that we cannot manage them anymore, that maybe they will be sacked or they will lose their job. And they will just become just like anyone on the street who has addiction problem. But I think some people are able to cope for a very long time. But I think it's only so long before they will actually finally decompensate and they will become like a normal addict on the street. But you're very correct. So people are functioning, but functioning not in the optimal level. They're functioning, but they're functioning because the society is actually supportive of them. And they have the money.
Something prepping them. Sometimes it's family.
It's family. Thank you. You're very correct. Family.
Sometimes they're very bright and can hide it, like loads, I think, of people who, I think we had that, there was a time it was happening in the city where traders who were working long hours were still able to perform. But what you're saying is that if you are and you're functioning, so you could be a professional, you could, I've even known of doctors, professionals, lawyers who are addicted to something. If it's not alcohol, it might be a drug, it might be, but what you're saying is that you might be functioning, but not to your optimum. And there will be a breaking point.
Absolutely.
Where the addiction will
Yes.
take over.
Absolutely. And it could be quite fatal. Yeah. Funny enough, you mentioned the situation in the city. I think a couple of years ago in Canary Wharf, a lot of traders actually lost their lives because they were using opiates or heroin to cope with the stress. And they will work till 3 a.m. in the morning, and they were on coke and cocaine and heroin. But a few of them actually committed suicide because it got to a stage they just couldn't take it anymore. They become so dependent to the drugs, and they start having this tolerance. So a tolerance means that you get to a stage whereby your body is kind of just, the more you take, the more your body wants. And at that time, I mean, obviously you would need help. But because they're in the city, high functioning people, they need to meet their target. They just keep going until the body cannot take it anymore. And a few of them actually, unfortunately, committed suicide. So there's always a breaking point when it comes to people who are functioning. As you said, the family support is very important. If you come from a family that's very supportive of you, they are able to tell you when to seek for help, they're able to bring a psychologist or to support you. Obviously, you function to some extent. You may still be able to go to work, come back home. But if you haven't got family to support you, you're just on your own. And so obviously it's more likely that you become addicted quicker than someone who has got good family support around them. And quality of drugs is also very important. Most people who haven't got much money, they buy the adulterated drugs, they mix it together with all sorts of things. And that actually damages the organs, and it makes people to actually become more addicted quicker than people who take the real substance.
It's a quicker rush, a quicker fix. Yes. So that there is a point, if we go back, where you said people were experimenting. I'm just going back on what you said, so that people who are listening hear it a second time, where people experiment. But I also know people who experimented and that was their journey into addiction. There are people who knowingly use it to medicate, which I think happens a lot when you're talking of people who've had traumatic histories. Use drug addiction, or not drug addiction, use drugs as a form of medication. So somebody can experiment, and then there is a part where you actually become physiologically addicted, which is what you were describing. So your brain from which is quite different from having, well, probably similar to having a glass of wine to 3 bottles where you're completely drunk. So, but it's where do you go from having 1 glass to having a bottle every? I think let's normalize it a bit. There are some people who drink every day.
Absolutely.
They're not identified, or people won't say, or they would never, or their family would never say that they're addicts, but they drink every day. They may even drink a bottle of wine or half a bottle of wine. But I would say, in my experience, that you're addicted, because if you cannot, a day cannot go past where you're not having alcohol. Then you need to then make a decision to draw a line, from that. And I think I'm using that because that then steadily will build up into something more. So if you even use something like alcohol, that is like the permitted drug. I like to think it is, where people are saying, "Oh, I had a glass of wine. I always have a glass of wine every day to relax." Or I overdid it yesterday and I had 4 glasses. And it's a Wednesday and you have work the next day. So all these different stages and these ways that we actually make these bad habits become a lifestyle and then become something bigger. It's like people who say, I've had people come to me and say, I'm not a drug addict. I just smoke marijuana every weekend, every Friday. And they come back on next week and they say, oh, I spent the whole of Saturday smoking pot, watching TV. I'm thinking, something isn't right here. Something isn't computing. Yeah.
That comes to the third stage. I was saying about addiction that it's got 4 stages. So that stage is dependency stage. That's where you now become dependent of that alcohol or drug that if you don't use it, you're not normal. You need to use it to function on a daily basis. If you've not had a glass of wine before you have your breakfast, your day has not started. So that is the third stage dependency stage. And yes.
Okay, because I don't want to just leave it for in the morning, because in the morning is now something quite big. But there are people who have drink every day, smoke a joint every day, or smoke a joint on Saturday or Sunday, or young people who are watching maybe take some ecstasy when they go to the club. All those kind of things that you say that titillate and excite
the brain.
Feels rewarded, and we're back again next week doing it. I think I want people to know that some of these things, if they're listening and they're drinking every day or smoking,
they should understand.
They should understand that somewhere this is not where, people imagine that drug addicts are on the streets and homeless and begging for money. But I think for us to understand that actually a lot of the addiction can be within that family context, within that whole, where people are having GMTs every night, consecutively. And what is really going on for you that you feel you need to have this
so you're very correct, Lydia, and I think it's fair for people to, if you're in control of your consumption, alcohol consumption or drugs use, okay, that's fine. But it will get to a certain stage as you're using the drugs or the alcohol that you will not be able to control the amount of such substance you take into your
system. Where is the flip? Because I don't want people to think I'm calling everybody a drug addict. I'm going to get called out for this.
The flip is, as I said earlier on, when you keep having that craving, you're craving for it. That if you don't have it, in fact, people who crave, they can actually break into a store to get a bottle of alcohol. It's that bad that they will break into a store to grab a bottle of beer or a wine or whiskey or something. Also, people who use drugs, if they want the drug, they can actually break into a car to steal something to sell in order to be able to buy drugs. So that is dependency. You need it to follow yourself.
Go through the 4 stages again for people
who it is experimentation. You just experiment, you want to feel it, you want to know how it feels like. And just like when we were in school, I didn't try it, but most kids, they've tried marijuana. I just never liked even smoking, not to talk about India hemp or something. So people try it and they don't like it, they leave it that way. But some people will take it to continue use, which is second stage, where you keep increasing the amount of drugs you're using or the units of alcohol. You keep taking it, and when you get to that stage, you're about to cross the borderline, which will lead you to dependency and tolerance. That's third stage. And after that, the 4th stage is addiction. So dependency, you're still like, you can't cope, you just have to drink it, but there's a fine line between dependency and addiction. But as soon as you get to the addiction level, if there's no help, quick help at that stage, then you fall into total addiction.
when you are now totally addicted, that is when you need to go to rehab. So can you quickly explain rehab to people?
I mean,
rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation, yeah. So yeah, it is. I mean, it's one of my role as well. I refer people to. I don't do rehab, but people with addiction problem in my services, I suppose them to our rehab center. But before someone could start rehabilitation, you have to actually agree within yourself that you're set for that. It's a journey. So it is not about we can do our rehab, we get you all the drugs. As soon as you step out of the rehab, if you're not actually ready to give it up, you just start all over again. And I've seen a lot of people that in and out of rehab, they clean them up, they go out within 24 hours, they're drunk or they start using drugs again. So that is where therapy comes into it, psychotherapy and counseling. That people have to go through counseling and therapy to actually come to terms. Why am I using drugs? What is drugs doing to me, to my body, to my life, my family life? So it's only when you come to terms with that you can now say, okay, now I'm ready for rehabilitation. But counseling is an important element before we can start talking about rehabilitation. So it's a long journey, and for me, people with addiction apps are out there, but you need to actually have that conviction within yourself that you're ready for help.
So so if anybody's watching, listening, have a family habit person or a friend, a work colleague, or the person themselves thinks, okay, you know what, I can identify myself. I think the experimenting means a person tries it and walks away. Yeah. But if you can identify yourself either at stage 2, stage 3, or stage 4, the advice would be for them to get some
therapy.
To find some way to talk about what's going on for them before it moves to the next stage. And then if it's at the final stage, they need to actually make a really big commitment to themselves that they want to change.
Absolutely. Because as soon as you get to the third stage, really, I think it's a bit too far. Then it's about, because you start affecting your health, your family, finances, yes, absolutely. Divorce will come in, a lot of things will start coming. Kids will start misbehaving because the dad is coming home and is drunk and is high on drugs. Yes. So it is a very interesting area, addiction, and unfortunately, we have people with more addiction since diverted to COVID. Since we welcomed COVID a year ago, I mean, a lot of people are using drugs to actually numb their pain or to cope with the advent of COVID. So it is addiction is a big thing. It's a big thing. Yeah.
Well, we've sort of come to time. What would you like to leave us with? You can tell people where to find you if they need to.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I work for the National Health Service, CNWL, Bryant in London. And if you want to find me, just go through Lydia. Lydia knows, she knows where to find me.
Okay, what's your last word for anybody watching? It doesn't have to do with anything I talked about. It can just be an ethos that you have that you want to share with us.
I mean, what I want to share with people is that we need to keep talking about mental health and mental illness. We need to be sensitive. We need to be compassionate and caring to other people around us. Your neighbor may be experiencing mental illness. Please be nice to them and be supportive and try to know that anyone could have mental illness. No one is actually, we all susceptible, we all vulnerable, we all can have it at any time in our life. So we need to be kind and show compassion to people. We need to keep watching Lydia, with conversation with Lydia. She's doing a good job. So I'm very proud of you, Lydia. Yeah, very proud of you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
what an interesting conversation. What actually mental health first aid, which I think all of us need to come to learn of, and moving on to something more important or more potent, which is drug addiction. And as he said, we've been in COVID for more than a year, and its implications, and people are becoming more addicted. Thank you for watching or listening. My name is Lydia Khalil. This is Conversations with Lydia, and I will see you next week.
LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.